Okay, hi, welcome. You and I have like 15 minutes to talk about Herbert Hoover. And it's going to be the most thrilling 15 minutes that you've ever talked about Herbert Hoover in your life. So, what I've done, I'm going to follow along with my outline that I just posted for you guys. So, it's going to be that outline in the Great Depression. And I want you to go to the section where it says Hoover is president. So, that's all I'm going to cover in this video. And I'm also going to put some photos up for you on Schoology, so as you're listening to this, if you want to look at some of those photos, follow along, that would be great. So when we talk about Hoover as president, he's going to be very, very, very unpopular. And the way that people mostly remember Hoover is someone who is going to be quite elite, quite laissez-faire, and quite not worried about the American people and doing the right thing for them when they need it most. And then almost FDR comes in as like this messiah figure, and he's everything that everybody almost ever wanted. And Hoover does get a bad rap a little bit because he is somebody who is really doing the things that his predecessors of Harding and Coolidge did before him, and they worked, right? Well, Hoover isn't going to do those things, and people come to really hate him for it, like in a very, very big way. He has a very do-it-yourself attitude about America, and when all this goes down, people are looking for help. They're looking for government aid, and he is not going to give it to them. So let's talk about how he's handling things. The irony with Herbert Hoover is that he was actually famous because of how well he handled the refugee crisis in World War I and how well he got food to those who were starving in Europe in World War I. That's what makes him famous. And now you have jobless, homeless, hungry Americans who have nothing. And Herbert Hoover's like, laissez-faire, do it yourself, you can do it. And it's not going to cut it. That rugged individualism at times is going to be very apropos and very American. But here, Americans really want government intervention. They really want someone who's going to help them. And Herbert Hoover is just going to stick to his Republican, laissez-faire kind of top-down idea that if you put money in investment in banks and businesses, it will eventually get to the people who need it. And this policy has worked in the past, right? So in fairness to him, this has worked in the early 20s, this is going to work in the 1950s, this is even going to work in the 1990s. But Hoover fails to realize that this isn't just like a quick thing. This is going to become a vicious cycle because when you do not have people spending, businesses are doing badly. When businesses do badly, stocks suffer, and businesses have to lay people off. And when people are unemployed, people are not spending, and so on and so forth, right? And I think about Hoover like I think about going to the doctor. We all know you guys have been absent like crazy. There's stuff going around always at Narden, germ place here. But if you have a virus, really there's nothing a doctor can do for a virus, right? A virus needs to just run its course, and then you will be better when you're going to be better. But sometimes you just go to the doctor and you're like, oh my God, what should I do? I have this flu. And there's like Dr. A, right? Dr. A can say like, you have a virus. There's nothing I can do for you. You'll get better when you're better. And you leave that office being like, what a jerk. I hate that person, and now I feel miserable, and my doctor was mean to me. Then there's Dr. B. Dr. B is not going to make you feel better, but Dr. B is like, oh my gosh, I really like this over-the-counter nasal congestant. Get this, I'm so sorry. Have you tried Theraflu? They're just nice, and they have suggestions, and they're trying to help, even though there's nothing they can really do because you have to get better, right? Herbert Hoover is definitely Dr. A, and America's going to come to hate him for it. When FDR steps in as Dr. B and is helping out and doing all those things, a lot of things he's going to do aren't going to work, but he's trying, and he's showing that he cares. And he's showing America that he is going to almost do whatever it takes to make us better, and Hoover's not that guy. He's just not that guy. So it's kind of like America's in that, like Carrie Underwood song, Jesus Take the Wheel. Like, we want someone to handle this for us. This has just gotten too bad. It's too ugly. And what we're doing isn't working. And we want someone to rescue us. And Herbert Hoover is not that guy. So Hoover has a couple of things that he tries. The first is the associative state. The most famous example of the associative state is the Hoover Dam. And I put that picture in there for you. Instead of the government saying this is what you should do, the associative state encourages people to collaborate, businesses to collaborate themselves. And he tests this out in the Hoover Dam. He gets electricians together, construction companies, all this stuff. And the dam is going to be a huge success. The dam is obviously still running, still doing a good job. And it shows that this can be beneficial, right? And this is a very Republican view. Like, a Democrat would have more made it a law that these companies work together. Herbert Hoover says, I'll be Republican and I will encourage you to do this. So, the Hoover Dam is going to be great and still standing today, but people say, what the heck? I'm starving, I don't have a job, and you built a dam out in Nevada? You think that's going to help? So this is not going to be so great. Another one is voluntary cooperation. And this is a model like the Lexington Co-op. You ask people to come together on their own behalf to fix things themselves. And where he really tries to do this is with farmers. He says to farmers, hey, come together, raise your prices. If you work it out, it'll be okay. But that's like saying to people, like, don't panic when everyone, like, the house is on fire, This is not a time for smooth conversations and agreeing to gradually increase prices. This is a time for some serious intervention, and people are having a really, really hard time with this. We're not spending, the crisis is not over. So this is very difficult to encourage people to trust this. And that's going to be one of the best things FDR does. He gets us to trust again in these government institutions and in him. And then a lot of things work because of that. Hoover doesn't. Hoover doesn't have the people's trust. And people have gone into survival mode, right? Businesses are trying to save their own skins. People are doing now what's best for themselves and their families. They're not sharing. They're not having logical conversations about prices and wages. And Hoover's whole, like, band together and you'll be fine message is ringing hollow with people right now. So he does try aid a little bit. The first thing is going to be known as the RFC, and that's the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, 1932. So this is $2 billion, which back then is a lot of money, given to the federal government to banks and insurance companies. And again, Hoover believes in that trickle down, as old as Hamilton, saying if you put that money at the top, it will make its way down to the people who need it. Well, as you can imagine, lots of people who are middle and lower class think this is ridiculous and criticize this. And they say people have bread lines, they need direct aid, and you're giving money to businesses and to banks? This doesn't go over well. Federal Home Loan Bank, as you and I are going to discuss, one of the biggest issues going on with America right now is that we're homeless. People cannot keep up their housing payments. We said your house becomes the first thing that's really collateral when you owe money for those margin loans or whatever you owe. So this is Hoover trying to reduce the number of home foreclosures, him giving this money to people for loans. And then he passes a super high tariff called the Smoot-Hawley tariff in 1930. And as you and I know, the big idea of a tariff is to encourage people to buy American goods at home, which, okay, is good, but he makes it so high that it just kills Europe. Europe then says, fine, if you want to do that, we're not trading with you. It just slows down what's already a really fraught relationship between us and Europe and other international trade, and it just slows everything down. So as you can imagine, Hoover's unpopularity is absolutely enormous. And again, some of this is unfair because he's doing the things that have worked in the past, and also America's looking for someone to blame, right? Everything has gone up in smoke. Who to blame but Hoover? And I'm going to post this video for you to listen to just for fun. That song in Annie, the musical, We'd Like to Thank You, Herbert Hoover. They're saying some bad things about him, and that's like a kid's musical, They're saying, we have no turkey for our stuffing, how about we stuff you? And we know they're going to name those awful slums where people are homeless and building materials out of cardboard boxes and scraps of wood, Hoovervilles, after him, as like a, this is why I'm here, because of you, you know what. So his public image gets even worse when we come to the bonus march in May of 1932. So these are World War I vets who were promised a bonus, but this bonus would kick in for their work as of 1945. And they go, we need this bonus now. Like, if you have that money, give us the bonus right now. So they go to Washington, and they're all veterans, right? And they camp out in the White House, in front of the White House, and they do not leave. And Hoover not only refuses to pay their bonuses, he actually raises taxes at this time, because he says we always need a balanced budget. Like, not the time, buddy, right? And then when those bonus marchers refuse to leave, Herbert Hoover then sends the military after them to clear them out. So the next day in the paper, America sees pictures of American flags on the ground, of American vets being dragged along the grass, punched, pulled away from buildings. And we're deeply disturbed that this is what our country has come to, and people blame Hoover for it, right? They're going to say, I can't believe this is how he's dealing with it. And we'll see how FDR deals with it. It's like night and day. So his public image is shot. And America may not be able to control right now what's going on with our country and our economy, but we can control who's in charge. We have the power of the vote, right? And again, we just so badly want to change. Our status quo is not working in a very, very clear way, in a very awful way, right? So if it was Democrats who had been in power before the Great Depression and Hoover was a Democrat, who would people want? They would want a Republican, right? Now that it's Republicans who were in charge before, and Hoover being a Republican, what do people want badly? They want a Democrat. They just want change, right? And they think that that's going to give them what they need. So we already start to see that with the congressional election of 1930, and Republicans were in power for a long time in Congress. A lot of them get kicked out in this congressional election in 1930. And it becomes very, very democratic of a Congress, which we're going to remember when we get to FDR, because then he's going to pass laws like boom, boom, boom. And then you have the big presidential election of 1932. And you have Hoover, who has nearly lost all favor, and people are not excited about his reelection. He also tries to freak them out. He gets very apocalyptic and says that, like, dust and tumbleweeds will blow through cities if he's not elected. He gets very strange and desperate. And then you have FDR. And FDR is this very wealthy patrician from New York, who we're going to talk about, grew up with, as they say, a silver spoon in his mouth, knows nothing of poverty himself, and yet has been doing such effective and compassionate reform in the state of New York. And people look at that and they see him, and people cling to FDR like a life raft. And we're going to talk about this generation's love, dedication, and almost like canonization of FDR. They just revere him, because he's going to be the guy who helps them out. Even if everything doesn't work, he's going to try just about everything. So they choose him. They choose him. And we're going to talk about this generation a lot. There's a book by Tom Brokaw called The Greatest Generation, how these guys are the same guys who are living through the Great Depression. They witnessed their fathers and friends go through World War I, and we know it's going to be just years before they have to dust themselves off and they have to go and fight in World War II. And that's why they have earned this name, the Greatest Generation. So when you and I start again, we're going to talk a lot about FDR. But as we talk about kind of what's going on right now in America and how Americans are dealing with it and living, I wanted you to know what Hoover was doing, and it's not that much, and it's, for most people, not enough. Okay? So look at those pictures and watch this. And we'll keep having quick videos like this. I really hope that no one ever walks by, because it's kind of weird that I'm just talking to myself. But hey, whatever works, we'll get on track, okay? I'll see you later. Bye.